Managers of Reddit, what made you fire an employee on their first day?
She just left, I couldn't find her anywhere. Called her later at her parents' home and fired her. Mom was pissed at me.
I know my application said I can work anytime, but really I can't work nights and weekends. She was hired for nights and weekends.
Guy lied about knowing how to drive forklift. Drove into support beam.
The guy signed a non-disclosure as we were working around movie sets and production offices. Throughout the day he continuously asked if he could take photographs. Finally, I realized that his employment was not worth risking my own employment or the production company's information. He was relocated elsewhere, but he did not last long from what I hear.
Pub and bar manager here. This happened at my previous pub, new guy's first shift, and he was constantly on his phone and going for cigarette breaks without permission. 2 hours into his shift his mates came in and he gave them all free drinks, shots and snacks, a few of them were under 18. Fired him on the spot and he had the audacity to appeal, despite overwhelming evidence against him including 5 witness statements and CCTV, not to mention the stock count deficit. Edit, just to clarify, I'm from the UK, England.
Showed up drunk, showed up in sheer pants without underwear. Was a professional setting. It was a guy, edited to indicate gender. Second edit, I realize this isn't appropriate for any gender, I just got a lot of responses that assumed the person was female. Happened to be a male.
Girl snorted in disgust when I asked her to clear a table in her section, wouldn't be shown how to set a table, and snapped at another manager. Do you even want to be here? I asked. Not really. Okay, grab your stuff, good luck to you.
My boss hired a new lab technician. I am the manager, so he had to report to me. At the end of the shift he tried to clean medical equipment with dish soap. 'Cause he didn't want to wait for the machine to finish, which the other crew would be responsible for. He tried to microwave blood in a microwave for food. And last but not least he forgot to put someone in the freezer. For 5 hours. He was such a mess.
Hired a guy on the recommendation of another employee. He no-call no-showed the first day. Second day he no-call no-showed, but halfway through the day called to tell me that his kid was sick, which I'm sympathetic for because I have kids too, but I had to tell him we couldn't use him. Then waves of abusive texts and phone messages from him and his wife. His final text was super long and explained how I'd just made it an enemy for life and that he was going to get even by starting up a rival business and putting me out of business. If only he'd put that much energy into showing up.
He interviewed really well, seemed excited to be a part of, kept mentioning his mom in a "what a nice boy" way. He even brought his mom in after we hired him, she seemed really nice too. It's not so weird when you consider how small town is. His first day, he showed up like a fucking space cadet. Seemed to barely understand English, wasn't making eye contact with anyone but staring off into the distance like crazy, asking if he could take an early lunch 45 minutes into his shift. Dude was high off his gourd and we politely told him it wasn't gonna work out 2 hours into the day.
The dude who showed up in pants so tight you could see his entire dick and balls. It was a children's bounce play area, fun zone. We told him to go home and change. He came back over an hour later, with Starbucks, in blindingly white skinny jeans, same issue. Parents complained the first time.
It is what happened on the first day, but he didn't get fired until a bit later when we figured it out, managed a MSP team, hired a bright guy. All seems good on the first day. At the end of the first day he received a phone call where he announced his father has passed away. 2 weeks of compassionate leave for funeral out of state later. He was supposed to start work again but called from the car park to say he's too distraught. This goes on for 3 more weeks until one day we got a phone call from someone looking for this worker. It was his father. As it turned out he's been running this scam where he gets jobs with multiple companies and pulls this same stunt, getting paid during the probationary period regardless of what happened for as long as he can. He set up salary payment to multiple accounts himself and to friends to avoid detection from tax agency. This guy was smooth. Lied and cried. Conned the lot of us, not sure what happened to him, but we reported this to the tax agency for a case of tax fraud.
So technically not their first day, but this was the last day of their temp trial period, and then the next day they were going to be made full-time. He was a forklift driver, and we keep materials stacked high on very tall racks. Operators are told never ever to drive with the forklift raised up. You remain stationary, lift up, get the pallet, bring it all the way down, then drive. Driver decides to drive the forklift while raised, clips the water sprinkler, tears the piping from the ceiling, causes the water system to go off and half our warehouse flooded. We make labels in our shop and paper and water don't go well together. He ended up destroying over $40,000 worth of finished product. That's product we already spent money and time making.
Chief officer of a merchant vessel here. Technically, second in command of the ship after the captain, a seaman joined our ship while our vessel was berthed in Mobile, Alabama. He was carrying a plastic water bottle during familiarization rounds on deck with the third officer, and when it was empty proceeded to throw the bottle overboard. My Russian captain saw this, calmly asked me to call the seaman to his office, gave back all his documents, asked the agent to book him a flight back to where he came from. All of this happened in a span of 3 hours.
I'm not the manager in the story, but I was there for part of it. Dude gets hired, starts training. During training, GM instructs him to take out the trash. He refuses, gets into an argument. Apparently, he didn't know that he was arguing with the GM despite the big, fancy name tag with General Manager asterisk printed in block letters on it. Gets sent home. For some reason, he still comes in the next day, smelling of alcohol. He grabs food, this is a restaurant, without paying, right in front of everyone, including a manager. He then proceeds to start coming at a server because they couldn't tell him where the takeout silverware was, not the server's job. This evolves into a literal fight and the police get called. We never saw him again after that. This was all before his first actual day of work.
I had an employee call off on her first scheduled day. On her second scheduled day, she showed up 2 hours late. This was a sub shop. We weren't open yet, but we had been in doing prep, baking bread, and building our sub trays for catering orders. We told her that this wasn't going to work out and she got pissed. She started yelling that we were all racist assholes, and as she stormed out the door, she knocked over stacks of sub trays. We lost 15 trays to her tantrum. My boss went running out the door after her and the girl's boyfriend got out of the car and reached behind his back swearing and telling my female boss that if she keeps stepping to them, that he would stop her good. We are pretty sure that he had a gun. My boss checked the license plate and came back in. We had all of this girl's information, address, phone, social security, etc., from the paperwork, so with that and the security footage of her destroying the trays, we were able to press charges for the damage.
Dude got a job as the overnight shift in my gym. The overnight is here alone. He arrives at 9 and is here till 7 a.m. At about 10:30 another employee comes in to work out and notices the "Please scan here" sign is up. This is used when the overnight goes to the bathroom or has to step away from the front desk for whatever reason. The employee works out for an hour and notices the sign is still up. He walks into the break room, bathroom ECT, and can't find the new guy. Turns out he left an hour into his first shift. Manager had to come cover. He wouldn't have known till the next day if the employee wasn't working out there. Dude ignores all calls from the manager and doesn't even come get his check from his training days.
2 stand out. He was laughing at the ice bin. Admitted he was tripping balls. We laughed. I said, "You can't work here like that." We laughed. He said, "Yay, I know." So that was fun. She stuffed all the 5s from a fresh register, meaning I knew exactly how many 5s were supposed to be there, in her bra, assuming everyone who was totally watching wasn't paying attention. Nobody was gonna shake her down and the police were busy. She made $75 for roughly 30 minutes of training.
Not a manager, but was training a new guy on a plastic bag cutting machine. The kind of bags used for products like fiberglass, peat moss, or salt. These machines sometimes have plastic buildup around the sealers, and when this happens the machine needs to be stopped and cleaned. Usually this only takes a minute. Power off, engage kill switch, remove excess plastic, change Teflon strip if necessary, disengage kill switch, then power back on. This was explained multiple times. Twice on the first night, he disengaged the kill switch and started the machine while I was working on it. Could have had my fingers crushed, or had it clamp on the tools I was using and send shattered pieces everywhere. Lucky for me, the machine starts to vibrate a second before it actually starts, and I was able to pull away quickly enough both times. I stopped the machine, grabbed my manager and my union rep, explained what happened, and he was gone in 5 minutes. Fuck him.
Smoking meth in the bathroom.
I'm a bar and restaurant manager. One day the new kitchen porter walked through the front entrance carrying a huge bag of cheese over his shoulder, which the head chef had told him to pick up. He walked through the restaurant and, right in front of customers, launched it through the hatch in the kitchen, flying through the air as everyone just watched open-mouthed. The huge bag of cheese landed hard in the deep fat fryer. The chef working near it got scalded in hot oil and had to go to A&E. He's the only person I've sacked on their first day. I'm mostly pretty chill, but he was just a walking health and safety nightmare. Even after everything that happened, he still couldn't accept responsibility or apologize to the chef he hurt. He's the only person I've let go without a hint of remorse or sadness. The safety of your team always comes first.
We had an intern one semester. He was handed a large bundle of zip-tied cables and asked to cut them apart and separate them. He literally cut the entire bundle in half rather than cut the zip ties to separate them. Lost $2,000 worth of cables. Fired that day.
He couldn't tie an apron on. He couldn't count change. Asked him to unpack boxes and found him sitting on the floor just staring at them. It wasn't so much firing as a mutual "this isn't going to work" after 4 hours.
Not a manager, but saw this happen a couple of weeks ago. The local pizza place is frequent visit for my friends and they know our names and usual orders. Nice small town joint. New girl started working there as a cashier. Went up to the counter to get a few pies we had ordered an hour earlier. We were told 30 minutes. Turns out she had taken the order down over the phone and just didn't tell the cooks. Owner, who is nearby, says, "Sorry about that, Polarpatu, come back in 20. No big deal. Came back in 20 minutes and the new girl is doing dishes by hand. The pizzas are under a warmer. With her dirty soapy hands and no tray, she grabs my pizzas and throws them into a box, in front of the owner. Literal suds and dish water on the food. They fired her that instant.
I think she kind of fired herself. She didn't show up, at all, in an actual work capacity. Her first non-training shift was opening on a Saturday. This place opened at 5:30 a.m. So me, excited to sleep in because I opened MF, which was waking up at 3 a.m. to make it, got woken up at 5:30 on the dot because obviously clients called immediately. Whatever, maybe something happened. It sucked for me and the people trying to get in early morning workouts, but I made it there and had it covered. The problem was when I tried to talk to her about it. She didn't even let me get started. She immediately started yelling at me that I didn't give her enough space for her personal issues or something like that. And then she emailed the VP of the company about how awful I was. I wouldn't have fired her for that. I tried to talk to her about it to find out why it happened. But I had no chance at all. She just went all out, scorched earth. All she got was being fired from a person above me.
Got through training, month-long, and the guy had his first day on the floor. He was supposed to be setting up his computer how he liked it. I walked by because he looked like he was struggling. I helped him out and walked him through one of the programs and let him know it was okay to flag me down if he needed help. I proceed to help out 3 others, then circle back to him. No progress made. This was 20 minutes later. I walk him through some other setup. This is all from written instruction from a manual. I go and help a few more people. Come back to see yet again no progress. I ask him what kind of issue he is having with the instructions. Come to find out he can't read English. All of our instructions and guides are only in writing. In English. It's a requirement on the job interview. I guess someone walked him through that too.
Long story short, as a manager for Space Shuttle Atlantis post-Columbia, had a new hire that violated safety rules 3 times in his first morning, then broke another rule after lunch about tool securing and dropped a wrench 150 feet onto Atlantis, resulting in $3.3 million in time, scans, materials to recertify the impacted area for flight.
I was a school administrator for a K-12 school. Had a new substitute teacher for a middle school class. She was an older lady, very old school elegant. I'm in the hall and suddenly a class full of 6th graders are running out of the classroom. I go busting in there expecting a brawl or a gun or something. Instead, the substitute is standing at the front of the room in a pool of poo. She apologized and said her stomach was bothering her. She walked out of the room and down the hall, leaving puddles of poo behind her. I call the custodian and we start with the kitty litter. Thinking my day could only get better, I was shocked when a couple of hours later a student came running down the hall to get me. I follow them to a classroom and there is the sub again. Standing in her own poo. Again. The admin assistant had told her earlier that of course she could come back after she got cleaned up. I gently asked her to leave, and told her we wouldn't be needing her again. So, the custodian and I cleaned everything up again. When I got home my wife asked me how my day was and didn't understand when I lost it after telling her it had been a shitty day.
I witnessed someone get rejects before the interview even started. I was in the waiting area of a car dealership service center waiting for my car. The waiting area was right next to all the offices for the managers, sales guys, etc. So there's a young guy, early 20s, comes in, wearing dirty sneakers, khakis, and an untucked button-up shirt. Checks in with the receptionist that he's here for an interview. Manager comes out, greets him and says, "You're XXX, right?" Kid confirms. Manager then confirms that he told the kid, when he applied, that he had to dress professional, not sneakers, tie required, shirt tucked, etc. Kid's like, "Yeah, I remembered, but figured it didn't really matter for just the interview." Manager basically said, "Yeah, if you can't follow basic, direct instructions for an interview, this isn't going to work out," and told him to go home. This all happened in the waiting area. Manager didn't even bring him into the office. Kid was like, "Are you serious?" Then had to stand there awkwardly waiting for his ride to some back and pick him up.
Not a manager but an employee. I caught my manager masturbating in the office and he immediately fired me and personally shooed me off the office grounds. Gutted since it was quite a high-paying job, and let's just say I cannot recover from that incident. Edit, for those asking why I didn't report it for unlawful termination, basically I was gullible last time, not knowing how to counter this situation, so I was like fuck it, but I don't regret it, at least I have a better job now. Smiley face.
Not a manager but on this woman's first day she was clearly very stressed and not getting the responsibilities. She went to lunch and never came back. My boss called her and fired her, but it was clear she ghosted without even quitting. At a different job this guy came to work on his 3rd day in jeans and a hoodie. We were business casual but not that casual. An hour in he said he forgot something in his car, and never came back. Same deal, fired for job abandonment.
Our company photographed vehicles for dealerships so they could be posted online. We had pretty much one requirement: you had to be able to drive a manual. The company would train a person on everything else. A new hire lied on their application about being able to drive a manual. They thought they could learn on the job. It took the manager training him about 30 seconds to realize how much of liability he was going to be as soon as he tried to move a manual car. We let him go on the spot. I did tell him that if he went and fully learned and came back and proved it to me, he could have his job back. He texted 2 days later letting me know he just couldn't get the hang of it.
Not a manager but when I worked at a country club in high school, one of the lifeguards got fired after like a week of working there. There was a kid pretty much drowning in the pool and he didn't see it. One of the parents had to jump in and save him.
It was day 9 because I had to write them up 3 times first, but they would not stop falling asleep. In the cube, in one-on-one meetings, and in front of a group of customers even, I tried to probe for medical problems that we could work around if needed, and they assured me they were healthy. Okay then, you just won't stop. Gotta go.
I have been a fast food manager a long time, so I have hired and fired a ton of people. Guy within 90 minutes of starting just started eating food off the cook's line. I walked around the corner, he just looks at me and takes a bite out of a chicken strip. I am not a big yeller, but I straight up ejected that dude like a baseball umpire. That's it, you're outta here.
Not a manager, but watched this one happen, working for a big-named soda brand as a order puller. Busy times we would bring in temp help. Temp agency sent guy over, he knew where he was coming, was told the basic rules, including nothing competitor related on property, walks in with a big bottle of competitor's beverage in hand. Warehouse manager literally took one look at him, asked him if temp agency told him it wasn't allowed, and he said, with an attitude, yeah, but I didn't think it really mattered. For the record, the WM did try to give him a chance to remove it, but said it seemed like dude was just using it to get out of actually having to work. Take the job. Dude went down in warehouse history.
It wasn't the first day but the third, nor was I manager. We had a heroin junkie get hired as a manager at the Taco Bell I worked at years ago. He came in the third night and spent the first 4 hours nodding off in the office before he decided he should probably do something. He comes out to the line and starts wiping down the food, I'm talking wiping down the cheese with sanitizer. He made it halfway down the line before he registered that we were trying to stop him.
I wasn't a manager, but a supervisor at the time. Dude's second day on the job, he called in, running late, from his bartending job, shows up at the job, grocery store third shift, so amazingly drunk that he could barely stand. He was upstairs in the bathroom shirtless and covered in puke. I called a coworker in to help me convince him to get a ride home. He refused to get a ride, he kept saying how he's got a kid for about 30 minutes. I finally told him if he doesn't get a ride home immediately with my coworker, then I'm calling the cops. My coworker apparently held him back from fighting me in the parking lot. The guy still holds a grudge against me. Oh yeah, not only was he going to drive home, but on a moped. Fuck that guy.
My partner and I were training a security guard for one of the huge sites that we had. Everyone gets a work phone during the shift to use a live track system and report every so often. After it gets dark, me and my partner lose track of this guy on this. We tried calling him but he wouldn't answer. After about 3 hours we found him on the property's playground swings arguing with his girlfriend, or ex, on the work phone. Apparently he didn't have a phone of his own, so he took this chance to socialize. On training day, he couldn't believe that he was getting fired.
Customer service desk at an insurance company. Basically just rerouting incoming calls to the relevant claims handler. 18-ish, yo lad, comes from a temp agency. Seemed a bit dippy but should have been able to manage this easy job. After a couple of hours he'd secured his headset to his head by wrapping sellotape around his head and face several times. Weird but okay. Checked on him again 15 minutes later and he'd also sellotaped his telephone handset. Each workstation had both to his head in the same manner. Not only that, but he'd sellotaped his whole head to his monitor and was just sitting there going, I don't quite know what to do about this, while the call queue stacked up. I know no one can be quite that inept, and it's most likely he was either trying to be funny or he just decided he didn't like the job and wanted out, but I prefer to think he was absolutely fucking mental, and imagine that he's now a stuntman or a rodeo clown or something.